All right, Larry. Oop, I don't think we're live yet.
Hello, hello, hello. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
All
It's it.
right.
I'm getting a weird message um about one of them. But anyways, we are live. Sorry, guys. A little bit of a technical. I did not realize it was going to spit that back out at me about the uh X Twitter platform streaming. But welcome, everybody. Sorry to interrupt. But this is obviously a little bit different from us since the Astros haven't played in a few days. But we're not doing a weekly recap. We're doing a trade deadline show. So if anybody was live with us on Tuesday,
Tuesday.
we talked All-Star break type stuff, talked a little bit about some articles about how great a job the Astros have done getting here and kind of putting us in this position to have a real good reason to talk about trades and what they should do to help bolster this roster. Kind of what I alluded to in the article that I wrote. And, before we do any of that, I just want to encourage everybody to please check out the website, LarryTheGM.com. That's where you'll find all the work, all the articles, and everything like that. You can find us on X. You can find us on YouTube. Obviously, either at Clint the Scout or Larry the GM. And before I continue on, Larry, I want to give you a chance to say a few words and greetings before I move on.
Oh yeah. Hey guys, LarryTheGM, and this is one of the seasons I would say is our season, Clint. Like we have the off season, which I consider our season, and we have the month of July, which is our season. And guys, we approach things differently uh, on on the website related to the trade deadline. This is going to be one of several discussions we're going to have this month related to the trade deadline. We'll get into like, hey, some ideas about certain trades. I'll show you some ideas about first baseman particularly, and then we'll kind of open it up. And if we have some folks join us, we'll talk about pitchers, and we'll talk about some ideas related to pitchers. I've got the trade baseball trade values. We can look up pitcher values and see what that means. But what you're going to see is Clint and I are going to kind of go through a bunch of the content that basically went out today. And what I really want to do with that is kind of take you down the journey of understanding. Okay, I thought Clint's article does a great job of setting the big picture. Then we're going to talk about like what do the Astros need, and why do we say that's what they need? It's I think everybody knows a few things that they need, but let's be rooted in understanding why they need those things, and then we're going to talk about what the Astros can actually trade, because everybody wants to jump. Clint, I will say everyone wants to jump to this, like, let's go get so and so, and like, wait a minute, do we even have the assets to go get that guy? I mean, literally, Clint, in the last hour, I had I had caviar wants related to starting pitching, Clint, and I like, man, the Pirates are not going to give up their young stud pitchers. Okay, so yeah, that would be great. We get Paul Skeens. All right, great. We would have to trade every top player we have for Paul Skeens, and the Pirates still would laugh at us.
Oh yeah,
So so it's not good enough just to say, hey, let's go get these great players without understanding what it's going to cost. So I think it's, in fact, if we do nothing else tonight but really settle in on what the cost is of these things, I think we will have done the fan base a big service in getting to the right headspace. So we will have some fun, and I really want tonight to be about, like, let's get your ideas. We've got 13 days to the trade deadline. Well, I think it's the 31st. I don't, Clint. I'm not even 100% sure of that yet. It's either
yeah.
what the
I,
actual trade deadline this year is, because it never falls on a Sunday. I know that. So, but we got to the end of the month, and we will have at least two shows before then, probably more. Um, Clint's got some activities in the evenings and he can't always do it. So we may I may get on with the folks and let's just have some open forums to talk about things we're finding. So we'll do some first pass pitching discussions. We'll talk about first baseman, but let's take our time to get there. And so, folks, if you're here with us or you're watching this later, please subscribe to the YouTube channels. If you're on Clint's YouTube channel, please subscribe there. If you're on mine, please subscribe there. If you like, well, I'm not sure which one I'm on. Um, go to
Subscribe and go
Twitter.
find the other one.
Go to Twitter, and you'll find my Twitter account has links to my YouTube channel, and Clint's has links to his. Um, go to the YouTube, go to the website, and you're going to see links. I probably will end up embedding some of these articles into the article, some of the video from tonight. Um, so I just want and while you're on the website, please subscribe to the website. Become a so right now for the last 2 hours, I guess about the premium members have gotten my first base article. The money makers have my first base article. The Patreons have the first base article on their site. After we're done tonight, I will release that. Tomorrow morning, the premium members and the moneymaker members will have the article as soon as it's ready. As soon as it, and the patrons will have it as soon as it's ready. Tomorrow night, I'll probably release it to everybody. So, folks, I know people may not like that, but I'm trying to reward the people that really pay for the website, and so we pumped out a lot of free content today, the setting the stage, and everybody will get the content we're talking about related to trade deadline. It's just that the people that pay for it are going to get it first, and then everybody will get it in the next 48 hours. All right, so there you go. There's the advertisements. Clint, where would you like to start? Should we start with your article?
We can, and I just wanted to clarify on that. I did take a look. The trade deadline is actually July 30th,
Okay. Oh, another day
so
early. All right. So
it's a day early for sure.
so Clint, we're gonna have
But
to do something because we don't necessarily have 2 weeks then, or 2 full
no,
weeks. So we'll have to find. We'll be. This is another reason to be on the YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channels, guys, because
yeah,
you'll get notifications when we're going to be going live and talking about these things. I would suspect we're going to have it between Clint and I. We will have at least 3 shows before the actual trade deadline. Um, that's my commitment to you guys. That will be purely trade deadline related, not like game related or the moneymaker videos that come out almost daily. All right, so
right.
Clint,
And we'll
let's
we'll
go
definitely
ahead.
do our best to make sure everybody knows that morning or whatnot. When we plan to drop them and everything. So that I guess that's the unfortunate truth of trade deadlines is they're very fluid, just like it is with all the MLB teams right now.
Right. So if a trade happens, we'll be talking about it, right? And we'll kind of show it how it fits the framework of what we're talking. Now, I will hope that by the end of tonight, you're going to understand what I think the framework for the who the targets should be and why, and we'll talk about that. All right, so Clint, let's go to your articles. I thought it did a great job of setting the stage, and what, like guys, if you haven't read these, and I know a lot of people haven't, um, this would be a great time to call up the website, jump into these articles, and go for it. So, Clint, tell us what the message here is.
So the message is pretty simple. I want folks to be cautiously optimistic about what can happen at this trade deadline. I think that's a fair assessment for what we're all going to
Mhm.
talk about tonight. But what I really wanted to do is put into perspective what's really up in front of the Astros the remainder of the season. We got 66 games left, approximately 594 guaranteed innings that have to be played, maybe some half innings here and there. We can go about approximately 600 innings. That could be anywhere from 5,000 to 17,000 pitches thrown, depending on how bad pitch counts get.
Hmm.
And so what I really wanted everyone to understand is the Astros, from a pitching staff perspective, are walking into some very uncharted waters in terms of pitch inning counts for guys like Ronald Blanco, Hunter Brown, and Spencer Getty as guys that have never really pitched beyond, I guess, that 125 mark. I think that's a pretty good standard benchmark to keep in mind. Hunter Brown may have done a little bit more, I guess, in his first
Right.
year, but we're talking about them potentially breaking 150, getting into, I guess, what potentially could be 170 innings. You know,
Right.
um, and so I really wanted everyone to understand that because that right there should be the big driving factor on what the Astros do um, in the trade market. And we have to understand that they've done a phenomenal job to get to this point. And one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of highlight that is because you feel like the Astros are back, but I still feel like they're not back. You know,
Mm.
we're not the same team that we were in 2022 and 19,
Right.
17, 18. We just didn't have that luxury, and we've had some veterans that have not been able to come to the forefront and carry this pitching staff like they had hoped. And we talked about it in our highs and lows as well earlier this week. It was just it's been a culmination of good and bad luck in a lot of ways. We've had a lot of good production from youngsters and a lot of um, misfortunes with the veterans, but I think this also opens up an opportunity for the Astros to address some of the things that are going on in the outfield as well. It seems to constantly be a position, and I know I probably bring it up to Larry more than he probably wants me to sometimes, but we constantly go back and forth about this plethora of outfielders they seem to kind of walk into, and they no more no I guess more so now than ever that they kind of have this situation where they have a dire need and they may kind of need to start making some really important decisions, especially with guys like Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, Trey Cabbage, Loper Fido, but you also have Pedro Leon, and you've got Jacob Melton and at Double A and Corpus Christi, and then obviously Dana Brown brought in Cooper Hummel, who's kind of been up and down, one of those kind of easy option type guys that you can move around. And then obviously we're going to have to bring Tucker back at some point. He's going to be a key part of this run for a potential World Series
Hmm.
victory. So we got to make some room. I mean, the 40-man roster always seems to be a big thing for us when we're at the trade deadline
Yeah.
and yeah, in the off season. So
It's
you know,
definitely play a part in what we're talking about. What we will talk about tonight.
yeah. Yeah, and not just that, but I want everybody to understand like there's a money factor in all this too. And so I'm interested to see how Jim Crane is going to react because he's had to eat the bull. He's kind of had to take the full brunt of the Jose Abreu contract. Are they going to face the same issue with Rafael Montero? Is there a point where they pull the trigger and decide the roster spot is worth more than the money that we have to shell out in that regard? And I might be a little premature to that, but it just kind
Well,
of
I think it's an important question.
yeah. And so in some ways, I take the stance of I think he owes this team, the rest of the guys that have shown up, that he needs to pay a little bit to get them some help. But at the same time, we may find out he's not willing to do that, and you might find
Right.
Dana Brown's hands tied at the deadline. Um, and so my other, but and to end it all off, I just wanted to let everybody know if this is this kind of stuff you find interesting, if this is kind of stuff you're thinking about, trust me at LarryTheGM.com, here on our Twitters or X accounts, on our YouTube channels, on things that we push out. That's what we're talking about. So please don't miss the videos. Don't miss any chance to read any of the content and be a part of it, because this is the game within a game. The innings counts, the money, the things that don't necessarily jive with fans all the time is really I guess the boring stuff of baseball in a lot of ways for folks. And it's important to understand that whenever we hit this deadline, because we're already at 12, going to be 11 days, and they've got some. I guess they got a lot of questions to answer in a very short amount of time, and it all starts tomorrow night with what they do in Seattle.
Right. Yeah, the Seattle series is critical, right, Clint?
Yeah.
It's really important. So let's go from there to the article I punched out late yesterday that basically tied. I mean, I was so happy when I saw Clint's article. Like, Clint, that's great because that's kind of an intro to everything we have. So let's talk about the trade deadline needs, guys. And and then this opening couple paragraphs really set the stage of how good are the Astros? What do they need to trade for? Um, and and how can they get there? So whenever I talk about like the quality of the team, I'm always going to put up this table. And guys, folks that have been on the website, you're like, oh, there's the heat map. There's the Larry the GM league heat map again. And
Right.
all this is just explaining where the Astros are relative to the rest of the league. Now, this is the rest of the season heat map. This is what the projected WAR is for the rest of these teams for the rest of the season. So, what this is telling you is the Astros are the sixth project to have the sixth best team by talent um, in the major leagues, which they're actually third in the American League. And when it was tables like this, guys, that even in April and May, I was saying like, no, this team's not dead. They're still one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the American League, talent wise. So, but what this table really tells us is you go back down to the bottom row here, and it tells us the relative rank of the team projected for the rest of the season. How does it match up with the rest of the league? And again, red is good, blue is bad. And you can see down here at the bottom, first base is 28 in projected WAR, which we'll get into it. I don't know if I completely align with that, and I'll tell you why. And it says 16. Now, it also says 17th for shortstop, but I'm just telling the Astros aren't doing anything at shortstop. Riding Pena and Dubon, it's a sometimes replacement there. And you can see why. I mean, look at the rest of these. They're second, fourth, fifth, third, sixth, fourth, 10th overall, 10th in pitching, sixth, fourth in batting. They really, if they address first base, that batting is going to go to second or third in baseball. And depending on how well they address first base for the rest of the year, it could be first. So there you go. That's where the team is right now. Let's So what that means is really we're focusing on first base and we're focusing on starting pitching. So let's talk about first base. So I have tweeted multiple times. Why are people asking about first base so much? I was really perplexed, and until I did my own activity. Shame on me, because like guys, I'm the guy that always says, well, like teams are not as much focused on performance that has been. They're focused on future performance. So, that war table is looking at future performance projections for the rest of the season. And it says the Astros are uncompetitive at first base. So, why is it saying that? And it really comes down to John Singleton's been. Now, what I've done in this table right here is I've separated John Singleton during the period of time where he was actually starting at first base when Abreu was in Florida and after Abreu had left. Okay, and John Singleton has hit overall a 126 WRC plus. That is like that's what I've been struggling with. Like, wait a minute, he's been great while as long as he's been starting. Well, the ex-WOBA data, that 337 is good, but it's pink, guys. That's not great. Now, that's not 28th bad though, right? Um, so there's a little bit of like war disconnect from some of these offensive statistics, I would say. But this is where he's been so far this year. But one of the warning signs in this, what really we should be seeing is that John Singleton's been pretty bad against left-handed pitching, and this is what I've been saying. Like, and this has actually been one of the issues with Kyle Tucker out, is the Astros have been kind of forced into a position versus left-handed pitching to hit one of the lefties, and by default, it's kind of been Tucker. It's kind of been Singleton's better than rolling Loperfido out versus lefties, or Cabbage out versus lefties, and so it's been put Dubon in left field and put Singleton in first base, and he's hit more than he should. Now, one of the things here though is that of his ABs the second time, I would say since Abreu's left, they've protected him more against the lefties than they were during the month when he was in Florida. So that's the 12% versus the 32%. So they're clearly trying to mitigate that risk and spread it around to the different lefties. Now Dubon is a really great matchup with Singleton, or his actual statistics are, but the warning sign. Clint, how many times do I keep talking about ex Woba? I feel like I talked ex Woba to the point where the rest of the fan base probably like, Larry, will you stop talking about ex Woba? But here's why we have to talk about ex Woba. Um, Dubon has a BABIP of 317 with left-handers and 75 plate appearances, 812 OPS, a 128 WRC plus. These are great numbers. A 348 WOBA, but it's X WOBA, which is signaled by the BABIP here and by that exit velocity that's not that great, is a 288. That's below average. That's why it's blue. And
Mhm.
what the numbers are telling us is the guy that we're counting on to be the offensive force versus the lefties has an X WOBA less than average. And that's not something we really that's partly driving the first base number to be so low. It's like, well, there's really no partner for Singleton, so therefore you're rolling Singleton out against a situation where he's got a 199 ex woba, which is horrible, right? And so, guys, those numbers are telling me, okay, there's really an issue with first base. It really is something I think the team would like to address. Okay, so we'll come back to how they can address it before we're done tonight, right? Now, this table here, and I'll blow this up. Clint, this is getting at to what you were talking about. The the one of the biggest issues the Astros have, and you can see it in the highs and lows article, that a lot of the great pitching that we've gotten so far this year has been from young guys that really are young and new, because
Mhm.
Ronel Blanco's older than Ronel Blanco's older than
Framber Valdez.
Framber Valdez,
Yeah.
right? By a month or something like that. So, but he is in his really his essentially his rookie season or first full year. Brian King would so these numbers are from that article, like what's going to happen the rest of the year, and you take the innings projected plus the actual innings that have actually been pitched, and the innings that have actually been pitched in the minor leagues. So this is the actual innings pitched plus the minor league innings, and you get the you compare that to the innings. No, I'm sorry. This is the actual plus the projected. I'm sorry. Let me
Mhm.
catch my thought. These are the minor league innings that they've already pitched this year. You add those two together, and you take that to the ratio of the maximum number of innings that pitcher's ever pitched in any 21 through 23, and that ratio is the number here. And as Clint told you, Ronel Blanco projects to pitch 170 innings. He's pitched 109. They say he's going to pitch 61 more. 170 innings. That's versus a career max of 125. Now, I'm Clint. I think we talked about this the other night. Like, I'm not as worried about that with Ronel Blanco because he is 30 years old. His his arm is what his arm is. It's not like it's still developing or still progressing.
He's also a pitcher
So
that's never had to rely on velocity
correct.
to make a difference. So that is going to be a nice compliment to extending his ability to pitch and longer in the season.
So it's really going to be an effectiveness issue with Ronel Blanco. Taylor Scott's significantly over. Parker Machinsky's significantly over. Josh Hader's actually progressing to be significantly over. Now, Josh Hader had seasons where he pitched like a lot more innings than that, but I'm just looking at the last 3 seasons, guys. His load that he had in the last 3. Seth Martinez is over. Hunter Brown. Now, I will tell you, I was worried about Hunter Brown in this calculation before I actually pulled it up, Clint. Hunter Brown, once we reach like less than 110% or less, I'm not really worried about it. Like 10% more innings than the previous year. So Hunter Brown has pitched 155 innings last year. It's one thing, that now Hunter Brown was dead at the end of last year because that number was like 140% last year.
Mm-hmm.
But at least he's worked his way through that. So the number for Jake Bloss actually includes the innings that he pitched last year in college baseball to add up to be the 95. So, but there you go. There's where the numbers are. Spencer Arrighetti tracking really close to pretty much where he was last year because he pitched a lot of innings in the minor leagues last year. So, but this is really like a Ronel Blanco. I mean, I think we should be a little concerned about the Hunter Brown of it, and we need to be monitoring at least those 3 big starting pitchers:
Yeah.
Brown, Arrighetti, and Blanco. But at the end of the day, when I went through this exercise, I left it a lot more positive than I was before I started it. I was like, man, this is going to be a disaster. And at least if they manage those things right, I think it will be all right. Taylor Scott's another one that's being really pushed, and we're gonna have to watch his effectiveness too. Okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, part of what that means is like, okay, we really probably need at least one starting pitcher. I would make the case, and I'm writing it in the pitcher article that currently working on. We need a starting pitcher that can be a starting pitcher in the postseason, and then a starting pitcher that can be a swing long reliever in the postseason. And the reason I say that, if you look at, so this is Clint talked about the 40-man roster. If you ask me today who's on the 40-man roster, it would be this group of players that you would be making that decision from. Okay, there's actually 45 players on this table right here, guys.
Mm-hmm.
The players in blue we're about to see those players highlighted again. Those are the players I would suspect are some of the assets the Astros would use to make trades because they're currently on the 40-man roster. JP France is currently on the 40-man roster, but I think he would be the very first move that the Astros will make. Let's say JV was coming back tomorrow. He's not, but I mean, if he was, I think they would put JP France on the 60-day IL, and because he's not pitching the rest of the year. So if we add 2 pitchers, okay, the 2 trade pitchers, okay, so there's 43 guys now, but there's 45 if we trade for 2 pitchers. This is why I say one of them has to be a good enough starter that we want in the postseason, and the other one has to be someone that fits in with the rest. Now, I'm assuming McCullers and Garcia are back, and they're in the bullpen. I just don't think there's going to be time to build them up to be a starter. If there is, well, then you're competing. Then you're deciding between one of these 4 guys that's not going to be a starter. What this means to me, Clint, is that the players that we trade for must be better. I guess I'll say this in a different place. I guess I don't say it here. I will say it elsewhere. Those players that we trade for must be better than Arrighetti, Martinez, Dubin, what we reject Penn Murphy to be, And well, they'll be better in Montero because Montero's the worst pitcher on the team by FIP right now. So, and you notice I don't have Montero on the playoff roster, guys. So this is the active playoff roster as I see it today. So those players in blue would be some of the assets we would consider to trade for to be able to fit to get these players in. I mean, maybe some 2-for-1 deals is how we're going to get there. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck DFAing some of the players in blue. And I don't really want to pick who those would be right now, but that you can see that's what the roster 40-man roster framework looks like, that the team will have to be making decisions if we add someone. If we trade for a first baseman, that's another slot that we need to, we'll need to trade some of these assets away to get that first baseman. Clint, did all that make sense?
Yes. And I think it just comes right back to I feel like we've been talking about the 40-man roster for 6 years now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's when your
and
team is good, you got to manage it really
yeah,
carefully, right?
yeah.
Because otherwise, you
And
end up DFAing somebody you don't really want to DFA, and they're gone. So
right. And that was part of why I wanted to mention it as well, and bring up the fact that there's also part of this where the Astros organization has a lot of prospects that could age themselves out of a real opportunity to
yes,
play.
we're about to talk about
S-
that, Clint.
Yeah.
We're about to talk
And
about that.
so as guys, as you know, we're always trying to cover every basis, so it's important to be here, obviously, with
Yeah.
us and going over this, because I firmly believe you're not going to get much of this anywhere else, but you will get it right here.
Right, because this is what the front office has to be thinking about when they make these trades, right? So, guys, but I'm about to move forward. If there's any questions about anything here, we're talking about. I think everybody is aligned. That okay, thanks, Larry. They need starting pitching. Wow, I mean, your poll today shows that we just ran a poll, and I think
Yeah.
like 85 to 87% people knew that we need pitching, and some people said, yeah, we need a first baseman. Is there any questions about what I just said related to the 40-man roster and getting pitchers in and the consequences of that? Okay, I don't see any, Clint.
Nope.
And
We're moving on.
all right, we're gonna move forward. Okay, so now let's talk about let's talk about the part of this where we're trading people out. Okay. People are like, can we just get to like the first baseman we're going to trade for? No, I'm going to be I'm being dogmatic about this because I think it's important to understand what we have to trade. So I every year at this time, Clint, I feel like I'm the Grinch that stole Christmas because are like so excited, like we're going to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Well, we might we might,
Hmm.
but like I always feel like, wait a minute, can we afford that financially? Well, Jim Crane's going to have to answer
We
that, right?
we
And
just always come to the we always have the same questions. Can we afford it? And do we truly understand the ramifications of a certain move if we do make it? Like, that's what
correct.
always comes down to these questions, especially with this team.
I mean, it's fun to say we're going to trade for 7 All-Stars, right? But
Yeah.
like, do we even have the trade capital to trade for all those guys? No. The Astros are one of the worst farm systems in baseball by any fair metric. So and so the challenge is the other thing is, and Clinton, you mentioned this, the Astros are at, according to the roster resource, and I would be aligned with their number, 256.8. Guys, the CBT2 threshold is 257. They're $200,000 under the CBT2 threshold as far as they can figure it. Now, they may have $1 million here or there they're not giving in bonuses or something. I don't think there's any way the Astros are going over the 277 CBT3 threshold. I just don't. There's some draft consequences to that. Yeah, they're already running a payroll that's like 25, $30 million more than they've ever had before. So I think expecting them to go to 277 is kind of silly. So let's say that they have like a $5 to $10 million, maybe. But Clint, the reality is the answer may be, well, you got to trade the payroll out to get the payroll in, and that's going to be a whole different, more challenging, and really will kind of answer who the Astros are going to trade, because if that, and who they can trade for, if that's really the directive, and we don't know that, and I don't know that we're ever going to know that until it happens. All right, so the way I'm going to approach that is to get targets that are as low financially as possible whenever I make a choice. And when we talk about first baseman, that'll actually direct the choice I make. All right, but let's talk about who is and is not available from the Astros. I started with a database from the great website, baseballtradevalues.com. Now, guys, they have set up a subscription service, just like Larry GM has a subscription level too. So I'm going to honor that, because I'm not going to throw every single trade value number, although I have them, because I have a GM subscription level to baseball trade values, which means I have everything that they put out. But what I am going to do is I'm going to be able to at least describe the ranges of these values that they have. And I also invite people, like, this is an article from last year. This link actually goes to an article last year, same time, same subject, same issues, like what is trade value, help people understand what trade value is. Embedded in that article is a lot of trade values from last year. So maybe you can actually get an idea of some of what these values really are. All right, so there's 120-ish players in the baseball trade values list for Astros. There's a couple that they actually don't have that I was kind of confused by, um, but that, and I, this, okay, that chart looks familiar. What that's saying is, I think the Astros need to trade for. They need to be careful if they trade for pitchers. It's the whole 40-man roster thing. Never mind. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So I have some creative names for how I talk about these groups of players, Clint. There's the untradables. These are players that the Astros just can't trade. There is the injured, which no team's going to want to trade for. There's the untouchables, which are like the roster, the franchise icons that they're not going to trade. The price disputes where I think the value is too low, and the Astros they're not going to accept that value. And the throw-ins. Now these are four, and the throw-ins are simply players that almost are inconsequential value. We're not gonna be able to trade. Those are not gonna be the pieces that are gonna make the trade. Okay. So these first four groups I say these are non-viable trade assets that actually drive a trade. Does that make sense? They're the pieces that, well, we can just take any, if you're basing a trade on people that are in these four groups, that trade's probably never going to happen. All right. So the untradables. The untradables include Justin Verlander, Rafael Montero, and Ryan Presley. Now, one can argue that maybe the Astros could trade Justin Verlander. Maybe, if they found a team that was desperate enough. But what are we going to do for pitching in the postseason if we're trading Justin Verlander? Right? Wait a minute. We just said we're going to trade for two starting pitchers. What are we trading Justin Verlander for? Well, he hasn't been great. Okay. Well, but we still need those innings from him. So all those players have negative trade values of, and to one degree or another. Montero's is really bad. Um, you know, there's actually a player I may talk about that I would trade for. That if the team, a pitcher that I would trade for, that maybe you could convince them to take Montero in the deal, because they both have really negative trade values. But that'll be a fun article we do probably next week sometime. The injured. All right. these players are all on either the 60-man or 60-day injured list, or JP France is actually on the minor league injured list. So he's not pitching the rest of the year. So those players are not they're not tradable, and I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if any of the. I mean, we had hoped that Luis Garcia and Lance McCullers Jr. might be back before the trade deadline. I'm not, Clint. I don't think that's happening. I don't know really what the status of Penn Murphy is. I mean, I know that he's pitched on the side, but I don't know
Yeah,
if like
they
Penn
haven't
Murphy's
been
going to go to
very.
the, yeah, Penn Murphy's going to go to the minor leagues for a week and then he's going to pitch. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know, but of all those players, Penn Murphy's probably the only player that viably could make an appearance before the end of July. Um, and a lot of those players are out for the season, and there's no I don't think any team's going to trade for them. The untouchables, guys, these are the players, and you're going to see some categories in a minute that you could argue the players should be in this list, and I won't argue with you. We're going to go through those one by one, but like these are the players I don't think this team would trade under almost any circumstance. You can name a price. Now, Clint, do you disagree with any of those? I mean, do you think any of those players could be bought for the right price?
I I think you might want to. Yeah. See, I I personally don't think that you can trade any of them at this point. I I don't. I'm not comfortable with any of it. Now, if you were to tell me that the Astros, like the script goes completely backwards in a
Right,
matter of 10 days, could you see
correct.
a world where they trade Ronel Blanco? Could you see a world where they trade, someone like that? I think that there's some good questions at that point, but I, I wouldn't want to touch any of them because the uncertainty of the market and what they'll be able to buy is just too much of a risk right now, and I don't think
Right,
we've actually seen enough out of Bloss and them to really know if they're capped or not. And I think I'm kind of intrigued that you have Bryce Matthews' name up there already, but I think we understand why
right.
in the long run. What's really going to happen there because there's a big question uh, and who's wearing number 2 for the Astros next year, and that is looming over our heads, and that's gonna be something that fans need to keep in mind when we evaluate these trades and talk about acquiring talent. It's gonna come at a price one way or the other.
Right. Bryce Matthews is, and you may wonder, well, where are the other stud minor leaguers, Larry? And I'm signaling to you, of all the prospects, pure prospects, I think Bryce Matthews is the least tradable of them all, and partly because of his age, and partly because he's the number one pick in last
Eh,
year's draft, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's just
and the position, I think the position's important as well.
right.
It just kind of fits really well, and I don't know what the rule is on what they can do with trades with folks that they just drafted. I
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
I
something, but
think
obviously a
there
lot of
was
those
a
guys are
time you
probably
couldn't trade them.
unavailable. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even
So
think they're in. I assume since none of the draftees are in the
they're
trade
not in the
values
system. They
as
may
a
not have signed their contracts yet either.
right, and
Yeah.
yeah, they may just say no, they're not draftable, they're tradable. All right, price dispute. This
So I
is
have a question, Larry.
yeah.
Can you scroll back up to the injured?
Hmm.
I'm missing someone,
Who?
or can I not read? Are you about to throw us a curveball, or are you just trolling everybody by not having Kyle Tucker on that list?
Oh well, yeah. So these are like Kyle Tucker's still coming. He's not like injured. Like
Okay. I know.
it's
I
not.
I was just joking because I
Kyle
was like,
Kyle Tucker may
man,
play on Friday. Or, yeah,
yeah. No, I
I mean,
agree. I just wanted to ask because I didn't see him on the Untouchables either, and I'm like, man, where'd you put Kyle Tucker?
Kyle Tucker is not on the untouchables list.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. There's a couple of
Yeah,
Alex Bregman's not on the
Max
untouchables
Bregman's
list.
not on that. Well,
Framber
that one
Valdez is not on this list either.
I was gonna say those Alex Bregman and those I could understand. Kyle Tucker's a different story for me, but like I said, let's continue.
100%, 100%. I think you'll understand when I describe the list as
Yeah,
Kyle Tucker's on and what I say about him relative to that. All right, so let's the price dispute. All right, Ryan King, I like the trade value here, guys, is really low for every one of these guys. Um, I think they're 0 to 1. Okay,
hmm
and I don't think the Astros are trading any of these three players for the value that they would receive for them. Like, no, Brian King's too valuable to us. Taylor Scott's too valuable to us, and Mauricio Dubon's too valuable to us. And I mean, I know people say, "Well, they could trade Dubon." Yeah, they could, but if they're only getting a trade value of less than one, they're not trading them. There's really no reason to trade them for that little, right? And they're not. I don't think anybody's going to give them three for a trade value of three for them. So that's why they're in the price dispute category. Like, okay, they're not viable trade pieces. They're not untouchable. If somebody wanted to give you a trade value of five for any one of those three, yeah, they'd be tradable. But no one's going to do that, and the Astros aren't going to trade them for what somebody would give them. So they're
and and the
at the
and
price dispute.
and I
Go ahead.
will say with the way Taylor Scott is pitched, you wouldn't want to trade him at that
Correct.
value because he's actually been a very effective. He might actually be what we would say is maybe our best performing reliever so far this year.
He's
Um,
one
and
of, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
just in terms of dollar signs and production, kind of all in one.
All right, let's look at the throw-ins. Okay, so these players, like all those guys could be traded. In fact, there's no the color codes is the same here. Those blue players are the same blue players in another table that I said should be traded as part of a deal. All I'm really telling you. Notice all the yellow column, Clint.
Yeah,
That means all those players are
Rule
are
5
getting
eligible.
option and they're Rule 5 eligible. If they were taken off the roster, they'll all be Rule 5 eligible. They're all like Forrest Whitley has one option. Well, he's burning it this year, and
Yeah,
so he will literally have zero options after the year. And all those players, the December 24th, I mean, they have to be added for the Rule 5. There's a bunch of all those players are available to the Rule 5 draft if they're not put on the roster. Of course, a lot of them are. You can tell by the majors minors column. They're on the roster, right? But that's part of the problem. They're on the roster, but they're not major pieces of the well. Okay, so let me be clear. Just because it says majors here, they're not on the 40-man roster. It just means they've had major league experience. The trade values website. So the blue players are players that are currently on the 40-man roster that would need to be that actually may be used to get off the 40-man roster. But I'm just telling you, none of these guys. I think the trade value is like
so
less than 0.3 for every one of these players.
yeah. So the analogy is if I was making a fantasy football trade and I'm trading a stud for a stud, but they just can't seem to seal a deal, I'll throw in
Correct.
player A
David Hensley.
and
David Hensley.
let's make this happen. Like let's sweeten this deal, even though we may not actually be sweetening the deal. Yeah,
Correct. Right. That's why this is kind of like this is probably the middle category of the like
yeah,
whether viable or not, right? But none of these guys are going to move the needle as far as a trade. So
yeah.
I'm trying to separate the important pieces from the not so important or the unviable pieces. All right. So
And I think that's also
um
just interesting for fans as you scroll down is just the architecture of these trades have to fit especially well
mhm.
with the other team. Like, what could they need? Where are they at? Are they contending? Are they not contending? Because that'll dictate a ton of this. It's just we don't ever get into. I guess it's really hard to get into all the factors and everything that's gonna impact this. But yeah. And then this is obviously where all the fun is made right here, especially
Mhm.
trade deadline time. So
All right, so if you're wanting to construct trades, this is the article to go to, right? So If you're constructing a trade and you pick any of the players that we've just burned through, 53 players of the 120, okay? If your trade is based on those 53, it's probably not a good deal. It's probably not. It's not going to happen. The Astros aren't going to trade those players, or the value is just not going to be big enough. Unless you're trading for like a negative trade value player, and then we got to question, well, why are you doing that, right? So, I mean, there are players that the Astros could trade for. You could take like, oh, I'll give you three of these throw-ins, and okay, we'll make a deal. But they're not going to be the big piece. All right, so the next categories are the blow me away group, the available group, and I separate the available group in two subgroups: the ones that have good value and ones that have smaller value, and then the discount aisle. And we'll talk about the players that are on the discount aisle. The blow me away. Well, there's where Kyle Tucker is. All right, so this group are the group that I think the Astros would be. This is the group that we were asked about in April and May. Like, this is the group that people, when are we going to trade this guy? When are we going to trade this? When are we like, well, hang on. We'll talk about that in July. And the answer is most of the players that people were eager to trade in April and May when this team was tanking would be in a, well, they probably still would be in the category I call blow me away, because they still would be trying to extract maximum value from these players. Kyle Tucker, Jacob Milton. Now, one can argue Jacob Milton really is untouchable. I'm open to that. Robert Valdez, Jake Myers, Luis Baez, Zach DeCenzo, Chas McCormick, and Alex Bregman, and Blue Ball. And what I'll say about these guys is, these guys have a trade value of 2.3 to 32.5. Now, just so you guys understand, I'm giving it to you in the great. I'm basically telling you, Kyle Tucker's a 32.5 trade value, guys. You listened to it on the video, you heard that. So, but what I'll tell you is the Astros would demand a value that's double or triple that value of the players these players are in this group, because they're not trading them unless they get that value. And that's what I think would be the truth related to Framber Valdez. Now, let's talk about, because I broke down all these. Tucker, the most valuable potential trade asset the Astros have. Now, Jordan Alvarez has a bigger trade value, but they're not trading Jordan Alvarez. He's under contract for the next, 4 or 5 years. They're not trading him.
It gets at least 4 years, yeah.
And so Tucker is the most valuable potential trade asset the Astros have. And the team would absolutely have to fall apart, and then they'd have to lose probably every game from now to the trade deadline and be completely out of the playoff picture. And on July 28th or 29th, the team will have decided, well, let's just sell it all off. That's when you get to a point of a Kyle Tucker deal. But again, I think that the team would demand a trade value equivalency of like 50 to 100 for Kyle Tucker. They would trade him and try to pull the greatest prospects they could with that. I feel similarly about Melton. I think the Astros would make a splash deal with Melton as potentially the biggest portion of that deal, with as long as he was being given, essentially being rewarded with a 2x trade value. And that's the only reason I think that is because of the glut of outfielders that you've referenced, right? The Astros have now, if you trade Melton, and you're not going to get Tucker back after the end of the next season, then okay, what's the plan for the outfield, right? Then you're probably not trading any of the other guys that we talk about. There's a lot of outfielders on this list, right?
Yeah.
Same with Valdez. Valdez is going to be a free agent if he's not extended at the end of next season. I can see a world. I think it's much more likely that Framber would be traded in the offseason. But I could see, again, if the team tanks, I can see a world where they'd be willing to trade him. But what I would say about that is, you got to give me two viable starting pitchers back for getting Fromber. No, I'm getting, let's say, I'm giving you an A minus B plus pitcher in Fromber Valdez. I need two Bs back.
Right.
That's the only way I see something like that happen. All right. All three of those guys could have been in the untouchables list. And, I debated whether they should be in the untouchables list, but I think there's a distinction with those three. All three of those guys, I think, are available, and they have pretty massive trade values. Now,
Yeah.
there's a pretty big step. I'm going to get specific, right? I told you Tucker's the 32 and a half. There's a good drop between these
Yeah.
three guys, and we're going to get to a very different level here. Jake Myers is near mid range of this range, and Myers has almost twice the trade value as Jake Myers right now, and I think that one of those two would be probably the headliner in a trade with a team that is still looking to be viably a winner, if not this year, but next year. Let's say we trade with the Cubs, and the Cubs say, "Well, we don't. We're trading some things, but we want to be good next year." The Cardinals, we want to be good. We want to really be good next year. I could see a Myers or McCormick being a headliner in those sorts of deals. I think one of them needs to be traded. To be quite honest with you, because Clint, as we talked about multiple times, there's not playing time for all of them, right? And so that's the way I think of Jake and McCormick. So it's interesting because I'm kind of saying you got to blow me away with the value. They've got to get a good value for McCormick and Myers in a trade,
Hmm.
but it's McCormick and Myers may almost be in the available category that we're about to hit. Okay, Baez and Nasenzo, those two are really good high prospects. Again, we're going down the trade value list. We kind of hit a plateau with McCormick, Nasenzo, and Baez. Okay, that's a plateau that's below half of this range. And I could see either one of those guys being, if a team really wants, we're trying to swing the fence for a high level trade pitch. We're getting a who's the pitcher we really want, Clint? I'm forgetting the name, but we're getting a really good pitcher. I could
I
see,
mean, do you want me to name a few? I guess it all depends because there's also money involved too, right?
yeah.
You know, um, names that come to mind to me, but I was just
Jack,
looking, so I
I
was like,
was thinking Jack Flattery. If we're
Jack
trying to get Jack,
Flaherty's the yeah.
let's just say he's the one, right? Jack Flattery has a 9.8 trade value. He's probably going to demand at least twice that. Jack Flattery, Detroit's going to treat him as the blow me away category, right?
Right.
So they're going to right, and so and they may say we don't want Jake Myers or Chaz McCormick. We want your prospects. I think those are the top two prospects you can make in the deal.
Hmm.
And then we're trading blow me away for blow me away type of prospect, and
Yeah.
basically it looks like, to you and me, it looks the same thing, but both teams are evaluating both those guys as at twice the trade value.
And maybe they go prospect and an outfielder. Who knows?
Correct. Yeah.
There's options there. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the Alex Bregman of it all. So I don't, Clint. How many times were we asked in April or May, when are they going to trade? When are they going to trade, or are they going to trade
Yeah.
Alex Bregman?
When are we going to trade Fromber? When are we going to trade Tucker? When are we going to trade Bregman? When are we going to replenish the farm system? Because this thing's over. It's just over. Too
I,
many times.
the only way Alex is getting traded is if the Astros completely tank in the next 10 days. So I have to. That's why he's not on the untouchable list. And it's clear that the team is not going to be able to re-sign him. He's a free agent after this year. Everybody should probably already knows that. I I just I see. I see the chances. I mean, Alex Bregman doesn't have. He's below everybody else we already talked about, right? His trade value is not that great, and I think the Astros would almost demand like a 3x evaluation for him, which I don't think they're going to get because he's a rental, right? And so
Right.
that's where we're at. All right, blue ball. I've added blue ball because again, I think if a team wants a prospect starting pitcher, he's essentially in the Senzo Baez territory with me. If you got to trade a pitcher, and I know he's moving quickly through the system. Again, he every one of the prospects on this list could easily be in the untouchable list, depending on what how the Astros are viewing those as.
Yeah.
Remember, guys, one of the main things I say is don't listen to what they say, listen to what they do, right? And if any of these get traded, it's because they really didn't really value them maybe as much as their words would say that they were evaluating, but they probably were given a blow me away evaluation value case related to them. Clint, did all that make sense?
It makes sense. One thing I do want to do is maybe by the deadline, depending on how things happen, is I think it would be interesting to know what Larry the GM would do if someone called and wanted Kyle Tucker from you. I
All
think
right.
seeing something like that would give everybody perspective on what what is being asked for and what kind of value we're really giving away. Because
Okay.
it's really hard.
I'm
Well,
I'm getting 3x value for him.
yeah, but I think it's important because there's a weird storm cloud around Kyle Tucker because of the uncertainty of what he really wants long term. The Astros are notorious for not doing that. How do we walk into that situation? And it's going to be the same situation that they're going to face with Framber Valdez, although it's going to be completely different because Framber Valdez will be 4 years older than Kyle Tucker is.
Right.
Um, and then I think it also helps just people understand how valuable he is. But I, I can't sit there and say that it's not something I've never thought of either. Like, what would
Mhm.
this Astros team do with him? Like, how do you navigate this? Because how many times have we let some of these guys just walk?
Correct.
And it's kind of worked
Well,
for us in the past because we had people in the wings ready, whereas this is different. I don't.
right.
I mean,
Well, I think
you're
they got
envisioning.
somebody. Yeah, how
Sorry, Larry.
you got to know
Yeah,
how good Loperfido is, right?
yeah, and that's what's going to tell us is like, are they ready to make those decisions?
Correct.
And not only that, but then that tells you how highly they think of what they have.
Correct.
And
Yeah, I
so it's
mean,
fascinating. It really is.
it'll tell. I mean, again, what they do will determine what the way I process what they do will determine how I talk about Jacob Melton probably for the next
Yeah,
year. If they traded Kyle Tucker, it's because they totally believe in that Jacob
and Jacob.
Melton can play
And see, that's where I
can
would
play for
lean.
them
Is
the
like
next
it's
year.
not Loperfido, it's not Myers, it would be Jacob Melton that they believe in.
Right. All right. All right. So I did. Yeah, okay. There's another 8 players. So we're still like halfway through the system. Here comes the big group. Right. These are the like guys, and we don't need to cover these guys nearly in as much detail. But all right. So I'm showing you the good value group is like 1.6 to 2.7. Right. So I will probably be pretty transparent about what we're trading for in the trade value, but now like, okay, you can just assume the players on this list are like twos, and if we're talking about a player that's like a 6 trade value, you got to get at least 2 of these guys, and probably one of the guys from the previous group, or you you know it it's got to add up, and and you know and you guys are going to say, what the hell? Why are we trading Kennedy Corona? Well, Kenny, look, I think one of those things I got to start focusing people toward on this list is the age of some of these players.
The
Like
age. Yep.
Ken, Kennedy Corona is 24 and he's in Double A, right?
Yep.
No, I guess he's in Triple A. Is he in
Oh,
Triple
he's
A
a
now? I
triple A.
don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, but I mean, if he was super stud, he'd be in the majors right now, right? Uh, and I actually had a friend that said, I think they may be in a position to have to trade Cesar Salazar. I completely agree. Cesar Salazar's done a really good job of showing his value, but he's 28 years old, right? And so he's a viable partner for somebody, and I think Cesar Salazar should be traded. Um, this next group, the biggest group, that fills up the whole page, and all these guys are point 0.4 to the 1.4. You can just assume they're worth a one each because these trade values are not that exact, guys. Okay,
Right.
just assume these are about one each. And you'll see that I got Jacob Amaya and Trey Cabbage on this list. Somebody who often wants Trey Cabbage, this team's going to trade him. They uh, they're not beholden. And again, you see a lot of yellow here, right? Well, why is there so much yellow? Because those are Rule 5 draftable players, guys. This
Right.
team is. I mean, maybe I can get there. Hold on. Can I get there quick? Yeah, I can. It's right here. Look at this, Clint. Right. This is this is this is the roster. This is not nice format or anything, but here's the position players. That's the AAA position players. There's two AAA position. No, that should be yellow too. There's one AAA position player that's not Rule 5 draft eligible. There's one AAA starting pitcher that's not Rule 5 draft eligible. There's one AAA relief pitcher that's not Rule 5 draft eligible. That's not to say that anybody's going to come and raid those guys. A lot of those guys are not Rule 5 draftable players. They have no more interest in. No one's going to come get Chris Gittens at 30.4 on the
Right.
Rule 5 draft, right? But these are players that if the team really wanted to keep them on the 40-man roster, they'd have to protect them. Look at the mountain of yellow
Yeah.
and AAA. All right, I'll go down to Double A. Double A, it's about half and half, and even more than that in the pitching staff. There's about half the roster of the position players is Rule 5 eligible in AAA in December, and about half or even more than half of the pitching staff is Rule 5 eligible in Double A. Look at the High A roster. Look at the pitching staff in High A. Clint, it's High A, and our
Yeah.
pitching staff. No, people complain that the Astros never paid a price. Well, here's the price. The system, these guys have not developed through the system where we can advance them. That shooting up. They're stuck in. We got 26-year-olds and 25-year-olds and 27-year-olds in high A ball pitching for the Astros organization.
Well, then that, and
Right?
it's like, what is the average age on those rosters? I mean, it's a little. Well, we've talked about this for years. This is kind of the issue with having such a great roster for so long.
Correct.
Is is you just start to age out a lot of these guys. But not just that, but you put them subject to Rule Fives. But then also, like, what team is really going to want to take a Rule Five draft shot at a guy who's in Single A at 23,
Correct.
24 years old? Like, it's kind of sad.
Right. Right. And so basically, the roster is just waiting for this draft, next year's draft, players to replace a bunch of those guys, and it's gonna be sad. But so I mean this group of available players, all these are available because look, they don't have a huge value. These are You can say these are throw-ins too, Larry. And I've just put the line at 0.3, right? If I pick the line to 0.4, it's probably that's probably 10 more players to the throwing group, right?
And
So
I think it
it
also
is what
puts
it
in
is.
perspective. It's like, well, Shea Whitcomb's having a great year in the minors. Well, he's 25, going to be 26. He should have a good year in in the
Correct.
minors if he's facing some of these younger pools or younger rosters of minor league guys. I mean, that's kind of the issue too. And that was kind of my issue with Pedro Leon. Like we've talked about that guy
Right.
for years, but yet nothing has materialized. So we just have this weird, um, we're just in this weird gray area. There's a big old storm cloud over this whole thing.
Great transition, Clint, because now we're into the last group. And this group includes Pedro Leon, which everybody is like, man, we can use Pedro Leon. He's going to get us. He's going to get us the next superstar. All right, the range of players in this group is 0.4 to 1.2. And I'm calling this the discount aisle because I don't think they can get even that for this group. I think these players are coming in a trade at like 30 to 60, maybe 70% discount than the trade value I just quoted you. And the reason for that is look at the ages. Every single one of these players is Rule 5 draft eligible or already been added to the 40-man roster and needs to be and it's burned an option or two. You know, Drew Strotman is going to be on his last option this year. You know, Jordan Brewer. I mean, I like it. I like all these guys. These are guys like at one time we thought maybe we're going to come, and Pedro Leon has to be added to the 40-man roster this year if they're going to add him. Clint, I think you're frozen if you're still with me. I don't know if Clint, are you there? Okay, we may have lost Clint, folks, but you know, this is the where we are with this discount group. Um, and so yeah, so Clint's gone. Hopefully we get Clint back. But yeah, the discount group guys, and probably there could have been others added to the discount group, but that's where we're at. All right, Clint, you're back.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I got a black screen and it kicked me back out to the start menu, and I joined in as soon as I could. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's all right. So yeah, so the discount aisle, and I put Pedro Leon on the discount aisle, and I'm sure that that's not going to be popular to fan base, but
And the
it's
argument could be
reality.
made if you want to make one of these guys a throw in, I think it's fair. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There's not a huge differentiation between some of these categories
yeah.
between the throwing group is really was specifically that a really small value, right? And so,
Hmm.
um, but guys, that's where we're at. And then so one of the things that the probably the overriding maybe dread that you have after I go through all that is, and this is the reason we do this first, is the Astros just don't have the trade assets to be assuming we're going to make major deals. The the first baseman that I'm about to talk to you about all have trade values between 3.9 and 9.7. And that would mean you probably are going to have to use you could use a couple of these players at the top of the good value list, but you may have to go to the blow me away list, or you may have to go. Yeah, you're gonna. It's going to be a lot more difficult to make trades for even one of the first basemen we're about to talk about, much less the pitchers we're about to talk about. The pitchers, I think, start with somebody on the blow me away list because you got to say, look, we know you value that pitcher, but we value these guys too. So that's the context. All right, so we're an hour 13 in. Let's go to the first baseman. Well, Cooper, he doesn't get called up because
Mm, I
he's
I
a
think
4A player.
he's a 4A guy, but you're talking about a guy who's he still strikes out 25% of the time. That's where he's sitting at here in 2024. In the last 3 years alone, he's averaged 21, 22, and 23. He's averaging a 29% strikeout rate. Um, I, I think it's a bit of an interesting fold because from a play perspective, I don't know if there's anything really bad defensively. It's just I think he's just been outshined by some better outfielders. I really think that's what it comes down to. But I've never looked at his splits. There might be an issue there, but I I also think that the appeal of having some of these left-handed outfielders makes a difference for them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so he's a glorified quadruple A player who kind of just fits in, plays really well, and it might have just been one of those things where we just kind of whiffed on getting our value for him or using him in a part of a trade to get anything. I mean, it, it's beyond me because he does have incredible power, but at the same time, we're anticipating his performance at a AAA level, and obviously we know that. And we talked about it with Loperfido and everybody. Like they have completely different metrics and expectations compared to major league players. It's fascinating.
Well, Clint, this is Clint. How many times have we used the word ex-woba, right?
Yeah,
So here's Pedro Leon's ex-woba in AAA is 335. You know what that is, guys? That's average.
yeah.
His woba is 391, and that's what everybody sees. This guy's great. He's incredible, guys. No one, the team is looking at that ex-woba and the statistics related to the ex-woba. That's what they're looking at. That's how they're basing their decisions. They're looking for players that they can project will actually be successful. And he's got a BABIP, guys, of 382. You know what that is? That is lucky. That is extremely lucky. So the Pedro Leon story is like he's lucky, 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 and okay, everybody hates me for saying stuff like that, but that's what those numbers would tell me. The profile on Pedro Leon, that's why his trade value is not higher. All right, so let's go. Let's talk first baseman real quick. And I know so anybody, this would be the time let you guys get your pictures in that you want to discuss. I'll throw a table up that's got kind of a work in progress, and we'll see. And all right, so this is I'm just now sharing premium content, moneymaker content, Patreon content that in the next 30 minutes I will make available to everybody. Okay, so let's make a deal for first baseman and get the resets to everything we had going. It's been a busy day on the website. My wife was like, "Man, are you ever going to stop writing today?" Like, nope. I just
Christmas
feel like
season
I'm never going to stop.
of baseball writers.
All right,
There's a new
so
thing to talk about every day.
one of the things we said in the trade deadline needs article that we already covered was that okay, first base may very well be a need, but that need needs to be a really good player. It needs to be better than Dubon projects versus left-handed pitching. It needs to be better and not be a terrible um, hitter versus left-handed or left-hand versus right-handed hitting pitchers because I think the Astros really want to have an everyday first baseman that they can use Singleton as like okay, Singleton can play versus the righties, um, and and then this Singleton can
And
play
hit,
some against the
yeah.
righties with putting Alvarez in left field, and he can play DH. And then um, the guy that we get needs to play against every single lefty and probably 60 to 80% of the righties. All right, so that's the vision. So this is really needs to be a starting level first baseman and a really good one. And you see my metric levels are pretty high here. So my filters for this exercise were to say they need to be a 790 OPS versus a left-handed pitcher. They need to be at least a 750 OPS versus a right-handed pitcher. And I really want Wobas and ex-Wobas above 340. Okay, that's how I set the metrics. That results in 9 first basemen. Now, you're not getting Bryce Harper. You're not getting Philadelphia to trade you Bryce Harper. You're not getting the Dodgers to trade you Freddie Freeman. You're not getting the Phillies to trade Alex Bohm, who really shows up in this list because he has played first base over the last couple of years. Tristan Cassis is the Boston Red Sox are not trading you that because those guys are in the middle of runs. Now the other 5 players have been like there's rumors around at least a few of those guys. So I'm not sure the Mets are really selling yet, or are they still holding on? What are they? I mean, I think some of these things, Clint, we said nothing's going to happen until the 27th of July. And I'm
Yeah.
still kind of holding to that.
I I think there's still a lot of teams that are like, if we win 3 or 4 in this next week or so, we're still in this. I mean, the Mets are
Right,
still in the wild card discussion, and anything could flip in their favor. But I mean, we saw the report that Rays are listening to offers on Rosarina and Diaz, so that was kind of a, you know, I don't know if Dana Brown's picking up the phone immediately, but I guarantee you that's on the radar. Um,
right.
and so we talked about Alonso when they were, when they were in New York as a potential, because everybody's like, it kind of has to fit the mold too. It can't just be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. comes with contractual obligations beyond this year. Pete Alonso does not. It kind of fits in that regard, where
Right.
we don't have to make a financial commitment. We have room to work, especially with we've talked about it earlier, with the Alex Bregman situation kind of looming as well.
So that's what this table is. This table describes the trade value for these guys and the financial commitments. Like, so Alonso and Walker would be complete rentals. Vladimir Guerrero would have a year after this season, and Yandy Diaz would have. I think there's a player option in there, but or there's an option or something like that in there, but it could be as much as 2 years past this season. And you can see their AAVs. One of the reasons I do not think the Astros will trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is I don't think they want to add $20 million of payroll. Now, if they do, they're telling you they know that they're not signing Bregman. That's what it tells me. Um, Christian Walker would be a really good option if they don't intend to have the guy. Christian Walker is 33. How much is he going to get? What does his contract look like after the season? Because I can make the
Right.
argument Christian Walker may be the best first baseman in baseball. He's clearly the best defensive first baseman. But how long? I mean, he's 33, Clint. How long? What do
I
those
mean,
skill set look like in 3 years?
we just saw what happened to Jose Abreu after that. I mean,
Correct.
36 kind of seemed like the number, and so, but also you could say that could work in the hands of the Astros, making a negotiation
Right.
for a 2-year deal to Christian
Correct.
Walker and still keeping Alex Bregman. That there's
Correct.
room to navigate whenever you talk about, three of those names right off the bat. And obviously, and I think what we're painting the picture is the older they get, the more we're going to have room to work with them contractually and vice versa. Now, Pete Alonso might be an enigma just because he is going to be 30, but I could see teams paying 5+ years for him based on the
Correct.
upside.
Because he's kind of a DHE guy, right? Now the
Yeah.
problem is we got a DHE guy, so we don't
Yeah.
like. Will that really work? So then Spencer Steer is in this table because he fit all the filters.
He
But
fits.
guys, the trade value is 52, and by the reason we started with the extra, well, forget that. We don't have 52 to spend. Larry, we don't have 50, trade value 52 is Kyle Tucker. Kyle
No.
Tucker amplified, right? That's not happening.
And they're not
And
making
you
that move. It doesn't make any sense for the Reds to.
right. So here's the deep dive. Here's what the numbers look like. Now I told you what my filters were, right? And what what this tells me is all these guys are really good.
Yeah.
That's just in. These are all all-star level first basemen, right? So we're going from the worst player in baseball at first base early in the year to one of the best players in baseball, as far as first baseman go. The WRC plus is, I mean, Yandy Diaz is a 182 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching. That looks like what we really want, right? The focus was to get somebody that can play 100% of the time versus the left-handed pitchers, right? Look at the OPS. Look at the WOBA and the ex WOBA versus left-handed pitching, right? I really like Yandy Diaz in this calculation, in this analysis. Now, will the Rays trade him? I think there's a tweet out there, Clint, and I
Yeah. The
probably should
Bleacher
add it to
Report.
this article.
Yeah. I'll
Go
find
ahead.
it, but I shared a tweet with you earlier today. Uh, from Bleacher Report saying that they're listening to calls
Yeah, and
on
Yandy
those
Diaz
two.
is one of the players they'll listen to call on. Now,
Yeah,
Yandy Diaz's trade value is about 10. Well, guys,
so I will.
if yeah, you can
Sorry,
share
Larry.
that.
I'm gonna plug that into the chat, and then I'm gonna share it 1 second.
Okay. So with a trade value of 10, like you can get one of those players that's in that group of like, we want to be rewarded. So you could choose like a Chas McCormick and a couple, maybe one or two of the guys that are in that group. In fact, I went and did that. Donnie Diaz for Chas McCormick and Alonzo Treadwell. And guys, this is a very close deal. Now you may say, well, the Rays are going to want 15 million or 15 trade value. Go ahead, Clint. You got it up called up there. So what does it say, Clint?
The Rays will listen to offers on Randy Arozarena, Yandy Diaz, and Isaac Paredes.
There you go.
So, and it kind of makes sense to me because I don't know if they're in a position in the AL East to really push for um because they still got to battle that whole division, and the Red Sox have been better than I
Right.
expected. Yeah, so um I think it makes a ton of
Well,
sense for them, and it fits the Astros pretty well.
right. Their playoff odds are 15.4%. Right. I think the Rays are just going to say, hey, we're going to go in sell mode. We're going to sell some of these assets, and we're going to get like I could see the Rays. I was looking at it, and I think Chas McCormick makes some sense for them. And so I could just see it being a pretty good fit. And if you put him, Clinton, you can jump back to me so people can
Oh
see
yeah.
the actual trade. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, there it goes.
There you go. Alonzo Treadwell and Chas McCormick. Remember, Alonzo Treadwell was like at the top of that available list, right? So there you go. I think that's a very viable trade. Now, we may need those two for the pitching trade we want to make, but that's what. Now, if we're what I don't want the Astros to do is trade for a first baseman that we're gonna like. That's all they're gonna get. Like if they go for a first baseman that's not of these four guys, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure why we're doing it. Um, Unless they did, if they're doing that, they're saying we don't believe the numbers of Dubon versus lefties, and it's gonna regress due to the Babbitt and due to the Xwoba. It's gonna regress, and we really need to address first base. But that's first base. Any questions about first base, guys? The folks that are in the room. I think if the I've been on Twitter. I'm just hey, I'm owning it. I said I don't understand why they're making this trade, and I essentially walked you through why I was saying that in this article, and then why I think they would still do it in this article. So that's uh, that's the realities of it, and this article and the trade needs article put those together. All right, does that make sense, Clint?
I like it. I like I said, it speaks kind of to keeping that flexibility both financially and with the roster itself. If they can find somebody that's a little bit on the cheaper side that fills a need, but I think we've also noticed it these past few weeks, anyways. That Dubon has played a lot, and Singleton's obviously
Mhm.
played more than we have. But I think that's kind of affected Dubon's performance as well. This is
Right.
a little bit of uncharted territory for him, being so needed in this time. And I think finding one that fits makes sense. But I think now we're going to be talking about how do we weigh that against the need of a starting pitcher.
Right. So this is a work in progress, Clint. I think I sent you a version of this. I'm not.
Yep.
So I have to full disclosure. The version I sent you does not completely align with the version here. There's more. There's like a few more players in your table. This table I was like, guys. I started working on this like 10 days ago,
Hmm.
and and I haven't reached really great conclusions. We had a really great chat on Twitter Space that I was referring to a lot of the players here. Basically, the players that I have a trade value on, I could just filter on those, and you would see that this table right now um, is filtered for those teams that I think will actually be in the trading position. So that leads me to 62 pitchers. All right. Now, okay, we are not doing a trade value for 62 pitchers, right? But what this currently has less than 4.5 for the ERA and for the FIP, that's too high. The Astros need a better. Like I told you, they basically need to have a pitcher that would compete with Dubin and Martinez, and those guys are better. They've been pitching better from a FIP standpoint than that. So I think really those filters should be down at 4.2, and the projection. So this is again just like we did the highs and lows article, and we were looking at like where they've been, where they project. This has also got xwobas in the data. So what we're gonna do, you're gonna make sausage with me for just a minute, guys, Clint, and then I'll turn it over to you, and you give what your things are, what your thoughts have been. But let's change the number filter here to less than 4.2. Okay, I wanted to do this with people so you guys actually see what I do. Okay. I started with a huge list of pitchers with at least 20 innings. Okay, that's not right. How did I get? Okay.
I think you did greater than. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So now we're down to 51 pitchers. Let's do the same thing on the projected stats because this is like, okay, my guys are going to be at least, and the average ERA in baseball right now is like, isn't it 4.08, something like that?
I believe so, yes.
All right, so now I just did it on the ERA and the FIP numbers. Okay, and we're down to 42 pitchers. Well, let's go over to the wonderful WOBA and xWOBA numbers. All right, so the average WOBA and xWOBA right now in baseball is 310. I want pitchers that are going to be at least like 320 or less. Right, so a little, just like I did with just like I did with the ERA and the FIP. I'm willing to accept pitchers a little bit worse than average, but because what we're going to come down to is we want innings eaters here, right, Clint? So let's do. Then this table originally was set at 350. Now we want to do less than 320. All right,
And
0.32.
the premise of that is obviously being able to get innings, but also finding someone who's a little bit more balanced in that regard as well. It's one way you can look at some of this data and get those flips and wobas kind of one way or the other if we start looking at it. But finding a more balanced pitcher leads to more consistency, and that consistently leads to potentially what's going to be more innings pitched in that in the remainder of the season and beyond, because that's really the challenge that's facing this staff right now.
And what I did there is I'm doing it for both versus lefties and righties, right? So I'm demanding that these pitchers not have massive WOBA x WOBA splits. Like, okay, I'm great versus right-handed hitters, but I'm not so good versus lefties. The pitchers, by doing that, I'm down to 25 pitchers right now. Okay, now I could leave this table like that, and I could work with those 25 pitchers. Now, what I would say to you is, I'm going to do something that's going to make no sense to everybody. I'm going to actually I'm going to sort this table on the highest BABIPs. Why am I doing that, Clint? Because I want to look for the pitchers that have been the unluckiest.
Yep.
Because they will be valued the least. Now you kind of see why the players are see there's numbers out there, right? Why are there numbers there? Because those were the players I was looking at before when I did this. Now I'm not sure where some of the other numbers are. I think I'm just telling you guys I've been working on this. I need to do more work. But if you were to ask me today, the challenge here is I really want starting pitchers, not relief pitchers. This is going to blow y'all away. All right. Well, the team's not getting Paul Skeens. The team's not getting Mitch Keller. The team's, you know, they're not getting Gary Crochet. So we can quickly go through and I can look for these players on the trade values. We're down to 10 players, Clint. These are my 10 players. And I know already that like 5 of them are going to have trade
Unavailable.
values that are too high, right? Jack Flattery, 9.5. Every single time I do this exercise, Jack Flattery, it comes up as a viable answer for me. He's a rental, but he's 9.8 trade value. The Detroit Tigers. Well, I can't find a way that that's not the best answer. Okay, so Clint. Why don't you tell the folks what you have, or what? Because I know you were looking at some things and coming up with
So
some options.
I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but right off the bat, Jack Flaherty was the number one name that popped out to me. And so whenever I was looking at him, I was looking at folks that had a expected FIP better than the FIP that they were currently pitching at.
Okay.
And then you look at that BABIP number as well. Higher BABIP number was a good sign just because these guys get unlucky in some instances. But I was also the metric I was really looking at was that, but I also wanted to see how many innings they pitched. I wanted them to pitch more than 50, but less than 100 innings.
Okay.
And Jack Flaherty's like right around that threshold. I think at 98, 99 innings.
Okay.
But
Makes sense.
but Jack,
I have 89 on July
okay,
8th, so that makes sense.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And so that was the name that came out to me right off the bat. Another name that came out to me, and he's not a he was not a starter. He was a reliever. Was Camilo Duval from the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
He was
Okay.
a very unlucky pitcher that was pitching below his expectations, but he had a reasonable trade value. Now, it might be a little too high for what the Astros are going to try to do, but it was one of those names. And then I remember, I I don't know, Larry, I spit a bunch of names out at you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so as I recall them again, I was looking at folks, and a lot of it was like some of these names make more sense. Um, if they were looking at it from the stance of we're going to try to make a push to hold on to them longer, like a Ryan Weathers from
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati. But I also, oh, what's the other name? I went really deep diving, and I thought what was interesting because when I was looking at those FIP and SFIX numbers, how I found some pitchers that were pitching at above a 6 FIP, but their expected FIPs were below 3.5, which I thought was
Right.
incredibly weird. I believe
Weird.
one was Chris Silson from the Angels,
Hmm.
and then or Chase Silseth from the Angels, who had a FIP of
Uh-huh.
6.5, but an expected FIP of 3.5, and Noah Davis, who had a FIP of 6.16, but an expected FIP of 4.29, which is kind of right on that 4.2 threshold.
Huh.
Um, I was taking it, you know, I'm looking at it from an innings perspective. Like we may not get the best out of them, but we might get enough. And those FIPS can always be interesting because you're on a better team. Things can go your way in a little bit different manner.
Right.
So
Clint, I am
uh,
not getting good values. Are you seeing the trade values
yeah,
for
yeah.
well, I mean, there's there's
You can zoom
nobody
in
else.
on that spreadsheet a little bit, but like I said, I keep coming back to Jack Flaherty, just kind of the value, but not only that, but the flexibility that contract gives us. And it's not outlandish to think you could probably retain him on a deal after the season if if he kind of fits into the plan.
Yeah, I think I'm after I fill in all these numbers here, I'm going to go back and just sort on the players I had values in because I know I had done this exercise several times and I want to see where my values were because I had 15. Unfortunately, people are like, well, Larry, you talked about it on the Twitter space. I had 15 players, and that version of the spreadsheet got lost in the Excel world. So I don't know what happened. Okay, I think I have two viable players, and I'm pretty sure Valdi makes too much money. But look, okay, let me blow this up because I know you guys can't see it. Tell me when you
And
can.
like just like to Brandon's comments, like Zach Little in Tampa is interesting. Maybe you could
Yeah.
get that paired up with Yandy, but I don't think for me looking at Zach Little just at a very high level, he's not. I guess it doesn't. It we may not get like the higher end ceiling that we want out of him. Uh, we will get the innings, obviously, but it'd be different. And I think that's what Jack Flaherty kind of really jumped out at me is we've seen him pitch at a high level at times. He's been a Cy Young consideration. He's kind of had that pedigree that could really be valuable to this team in the postseason as well.
So guys, so if okay, this is the caviar aisle, right? This is like if
Yeah.
we try to get everything I said from a quality standpoint, we're only going to be left with Jack Flattery or Nathan Evaldi, and I don't think Texas would trade Evaldi to us. I don't know that the Astros would want that contract. It is only for a year plus current, so you have to dig into the details there. But everybody else, we're talking about players that are 30 plus on this trade value. The Astros aren't going to get that. All right, so what I'm going to do, Clint, is I'm going to undo um, all the
Any
filters I
pitch.
have. I'm going to undo the filters, and then I'm going to show you what I had as far
Mhm.
as
And while you do that, I'll just like Brandon's making you it's that's a great point, Brandon. Tampa is probably looking to offload some stuff as well. Payroll rise, but making room for their IL for the guys coming off the IL. So the Yandy Diaz, maybe a pitcher, that whole kind of marriage thing might be a perfect fit. It might be a really great way for the Astros to fill some needs and work. And then I think that's the beauty of the trade deadline is you got to find the partners willing to meet you, at the table and really make competitive and realistic offers. Like I'm sure like we would be in the same position if someone called us about Kyle Tucker and it's like, well, we want X, X, and X, and they say we're crazy. Well, no, because you have to you have to make it worth it. You got to blow us away, obviously. And I think um, that's going to be the hard part is finding these teams that are in that position to say we're willing to sell, understanding what we're going to be building towards next year. And I think that's kind of Detroit, where Detroit's at as well. Is just I don't see them having the firepower to get into the wild card. And so, I mean, Jack Flaherty on that 1 year, $14 million deal was basically a sign and trade type of guy, anyways. Like that was the beauty of it. Maybe they catch lightning in a bottle and the team's better than it is, but the truth is it hasn't panned out that way.
yeah. So this list, all right, I'm gonna put the game start back filter back on.
Okay. So I
All
see
right.
one name on there I had some interest in. I wanted to ask you about, but I hadn't done all my work on them yet.
Okay.
Was
Well, this
Kikuchi
is
from
this is
Toronto? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and Zach Littell. That I mean,
Zach
I
Littell.
agree with you, Brandon. I agree with you that he he's a really interesting option because I think the Astros can put a package up to up to 14ish,
Hmm.
especially if and because like what you're describing, Brandon, is the same issue that the Astros have with the roster, right? We essentially were going to have when we make this trade, or well, even when we get the three pitchers back, we think are coming back, they're going to have 43 men on the 40-man roster, and they're going to have to dump some of those players. And like I don't know, some of those players aren't really players they want to dump, right? So they really would rather trade them than dump them, which makes we need it. Tampa may not be the ideal trade candidate
Hmm.
because for that reason, but if Chaz McCormick plus a couple prospects may get you into the Zach Littell, at least close enough to have a conversation with Tampa. Uh, Zach Eflin, now he makes a lot of money,
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, Kikuchi, interesting. So we're so he's a 4.12 ERA, 3.61 FIP, projects to be really good. ERA 3.97, 4.02.
He's got an xFIP at 3.35. I'm not lower
Okay,
than what he's pitching at now. The
cool.
BABIP's at 331, which may be a little high.
All right, so left-handed.
Yep.
Okay, the X Woba 347.
It's kind of the
That's okay, but that's left-handed. So maybe you can say, oh, well, we'll weather that for the 312 versus righties. I mean, basically that you know what that Clint that's like a near average pitcher, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's what those numbers are saying. And what's the Babbitt number for him? 328. So you can make the argument he's been unlucky. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's one in this. I'm gonna color this. So, all right, here's the other one.
Nick Martinez, yeah.
Nick Martinez. Now I wanna check this because trade value here. I thought I'm believe it or not, there's a ton of Martinez's in the trade value website. All right, let's see. Nick Martinez, yeah, minus 4.6 right now. So that that basically means they want to get rid of him. Well, why would Cincinnati be eager to get rid of Nick Martinez? Well, because he makes quite a bit of money. Um, so Nick Martinez has an AAV of 13 million. So what we've done is we just trade for another version of Rafael Montero, hopefully better. But this version, Nick Martinez, remember I talked about wanting a starting pitcher and then a pitcher that can be in the bullpen but also give you long relief. I think Nick Martinez is that guy. Um,
Uh-huh.
and all right, his BABIP is 292, which is league average, or actually a little better than league average. Right, no, I guess that's right on. All right, ERA 419, FIP 333. Those are good.
Projected FIP's a little higher, but not. It
Projected FIP of
wasn't.
4.04,
Yeah.
basically league average, right? Uh, so the WOBA 341, the X WOBA 298. I like the
Yeah.
298, and versus righties 268. There, I see no reason that. I mean, so the issue really is the WOBA, and maybe I just need when I do the heavy filters, like don't filter on WOBA. Only filter on X WOBA. Um, because I think that's a viable option. It's wild to me that he's got the negative trade value, but that's because it's making 12, $13 million a year. So
Hmm.
um, so Mark Hanna, yeah. So somebody I meant to let's call up Mark Hanna because I had
I have his fan graphs up if we want to.
okay, yeah, you go ahead and put his fan graphs up so I don't have to
Yeah.
change what I'm doing.
Let me get the.
All right, so what are we looking at, Clint?
So right now, right off the bat, let me get in here. Obviously, looking at this 2024 season off
So yeah, so this is
WOBA
what I
304,
here's
expected
the
WOBA
question I have.
293.
Is he better? Is he better than Singleton?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so but he's
No, I'm
right-handed,
not
right?
saying yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying yeah like he is. I was just saying like yeah, it's a really hard um the comparison is pretty Does it outweigh what you already have with Singleton? Yeah.
So he's right-handed, right? So
He is right-handed, yes.
is he like the perfect platoon partner with Singleton?
Right.
Maybe.
And so I was getting into it too. I'm so much more
So
used to using uh, Baseball Savant.
so his advance. So in the advance, you do see the splits over on the left. Go to on the left side where it
Yep.
says splits. Go down.
Yep.
Go down. There you
Okay,
go.
there it is.
Pull that up. So it's 145 ex Woba versus lefties. That's see the thing is I thought maybe that's the right answer. You guys might be right. That might be the right answer. The worry I have is like his versus righties is 82, right? So
Hmm.
um but that's with a BABIP of 251 versus righties. So maybe that's muted. We probably need to go to. We probably do need to look at a Savant page for that, right? So, all right, I'm there.
Okay.
Let me do. Can this this is literally. I mean, this is terrible podcasting, Clint. But this is literally. Welcome to this is what Clint and I do.
Yep. I will sit there during downtime at lunch and anything else, and I will scour the. We pull tables, we look at data, we look for options, and we just kind of weed through it until something
Welcome
sticks.
to the welcome to the sausage making of LarryTheGM website right here. All
Yeah.
right, here we go. Mark Hanna. All right, search splits. Let's look at him from. All right, so his ex Woba 293 is Woba 304. I think we saw that. Versus lefties, it's going to be incredible. It's 363 X Woba 375, BABIP at 340. So what that's telling you, Clint, is that's actually exaggerated, right? With
Hmm.
that BABIP, like he's lucky versus lefties, but the Woba split is not that big. So it's like, all right, well, it's probably really a sample size issue at 75 plate appearances. You go righties, and 264 plate appearances, 273 versus 284 with the 251 BABIP. That tells me he probably. Now that's interesting. The X-Will with 273. That's a warning sign. All right, so now I'm curious, Clint. Now I need all kinds of more information. Like what's happening here? All right, so 87 exit velocity. That's not great. Launch angle 10. That's not great. Hard hit rate 35. That's not spectacular. Barrel rate of 1.1%. That's not good. So I would expect that the Astros are looking at Mark Canha. They are really digging into what's happening with him versus right-handed pitching. They're looking at zone heat maps, zone maps. They're looking at spray charts. They're trying to figure out what's really going on there. But I mean,
Yeah, it's not a bad call out either.
yeah, I mean, so he's a free
I think he's
agent, so you're not,
35. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not stuck with him beyond this year. What's his trade value? Well, Larry, you're the one at the website. Yeah. Oh, his trade value is negative 2.4. So we can probably pay cash at that. You probably can't. You probably could just pay cash for that.
Hmm.
That is a deal where you just got to give him one of those players on the throw-ins. Hey, here's your throw in. Give us Mark Canna.
Well, he's
And
a Tiger too, so it's like if you want to call about
oh
two guys,
yeah,
you can make that
yeah,
call.
yeah,
I guess it's one of those Moneyball moments where it's like throw in Canna. I like Canna. You don't know who he is. Just give him to us.
yeah. Give me some Jack Flattery and Canna. Jack Flattery and Canna for Chaz McCormick, and yeah, there you go. Huh.
There we go. We did it.
So here's the story, guys. We will talk. We got more to come on pitchers, but
Yeah.
I I will tell you that Andrew Haney is another one that I had on my list of. You know what? Would Texas give us Andrew Haney? I think they would. That
I
guy.
think
I
if you
mean,
flashed the if you gave them a reason to trade him, you do it. I think this
he's
weekend will
got
be very telling. Yeah.
right. I mean, the biggest regret I had from the Astros Rangers series, if we swept them, then like, all right,
It would have been
give us
over.
Andrew Haney,
Yeah.
give us Andrew Haney,
I
because you
don't want him
guys
getting
can't
on the
get him.
plane or getting on the I don't want him leaving Houston at this point.
Right.
Cal Quantrill. I haven't looked into Cal Quantrill too much,
I don't see
but
him on
he's a
the.
name I did kind of think of as well because he was doing well.
Good. Yeah, I love these questions, guys. Hang on. Cal Contrail. Cal Contrail. What is his story? So I'm always leery of Dodgers. I mean, of Rockies. Um, so 4.13 ERA, but 4.76 FIP. But really, what you got to do with Rockies is you got to look at the FIP minus. FIP minus of 112. That's not good. ERA minus of 87. So this is why I look at FIP, right? So that 4.76, you say, well, he plays in Colorado. It's not they're not it's not as bad as you might think. Well, the FIP minus is telling you it's not as good as you might think either. So let's put him in the okay. Okay, you gotta do pitchers. Okay, gonna leave all those stats. Wolf and X-Wolf are exactly the same across both lefties and righties. 331. That's not, Clint. That's not terrible. That's better than the XFIP. The FIP minus would tell me it is.
Yeah.
What's his trade value, Larry? $1.5. That's a doable. What's his? What's his? What's his? He's RBL, the free agent, so is he 1.5? I don't know, guys. That's probably doable. That's probably doable. All right, we want to talk Josh Bell. All right, let's look at Josh Bell.
Yeah. High level right
Josh
off the top
Bell.
of
Hmm?
I said right high level right off the top based off of what looking at Fangraphs 294 ex Woba. Babbitt is 265.
Yeah, so this is, guys, it's just not good enough, right? I mean, Josh Bell is a minus 9.9 WAR player at 81 WRC plus.
Mm-hmm.
The spread here's okay. The Babbitt is telling you he has been unlucky. The 265 Babbitt, but I
Yeah.
mean he's a 286 Babbitt player, right? So one thing about Babbitt, and I'm talking about like, well, the Babbitt's too low, Babbitt's too high. Well, I also do check like their career stats related to Babbitt because some players, if you're extremely slow, then your Babbitt's going to be career Babbitt's going to be low, right? And yeah, his career points is actually 8.9 according to Fangraphs. But that xWOBA 294, that's not good enough. I mean, I, we can do the splits. Yeah, so we're looking for a player that's great against lefties, right? And that's not Josh Bell. He's 80 and 81. He's not good enough. Not good enough. All right, Andrew Vaughn. Write down Crowd Contrail though. Clint,
Cal Quantrill, yep.
we need to hold that one until further analysis. All right. So Andrew Vaughn, 92. xWOB with 326 though. 283 Babbitt versus 291. Yeah, so
I think
that's
he's a career 100 or 101 WRC plus guy.
yeah. So yeah, is that good? I mean, so really the splits are going to tell a story here.
And then seeing his contract, he's 26. There's got to be years of control left on him. So
Can you boot variable carrot from Laroon? How's that? How's he coming in?
oh, I know where he's at.
Okay, so interesting. Andrew Vaughn 120 WRC plus versus lefties. So at least his split is what we want. That 84 versus righties isn't horrible. Like here's my thing about Andrew Vaughn. Let's see how do I get off the split. Okay. There we go. Oh. All right, do it again. Andrew. Sorry, guys. I'm doing this all day. I want to go down here on defense. He's played 82 games of defense. Okay, well, that's more than I thought. I didn't think he was like how good defensively is Andrew Vaughn? He's not. This would say he's not horrible. So, can I tell you guys why the argument against Yandy Diaz? Let me call it up. Right. So, Andrew Vaughn, I gotta go find. I gotta write that down too, Clint. Why isn't Andrew Vaughn making all the filters? Um, there could be worse. There could be worse. What? Well, let me check this. Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn 0.8. So definitely. I mean, you got see. This is the most reasonable trade discussion we've ever had, Clint. We're actually getting ideas. Kudos to Cooper and Brandon. You guys are bringing ideas that are in the right frame of mind for where the Astros need to be playing at this trade deadline. That is you get kudos. That's exactly where we need to be setting the expectation level at. Like not at like we're gonna get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I would love the Astros to went ahead and made trades tomorrow, so I wouldn't have to write trade projection articles, and I could just write here's why they traded for this guy article. That would be great. All right, so here's the issue with that. Here is you see this number, Clint? What the heck is going on with Yandy Diaz? A UZR over 150 of minus 32.8 at first base. Can someone explain to me? Is he hurt? Does anybody know? Has Yanni Diaz been hurt this year? Like, is he just playing injured? What in the world? Clint, are you frozen again? I think Clint's frozen.
No,
Oh,
I'm here. I'm reading on some other stuff as well. Sorry. Trying to get caught up and make notes for Andrew Vaughn and a few other guys that we want to look at.
Yanni Diaz, what is going on with his defense? Minus 32.8 UZR. Okay, I don't get me lying. I'm not the greatest defensive metric specialist in the world, but I UZR over 150 is calibrating the UZR, which is a ultimate zone rating, which basically this is a in layman's terms a measure of how much range they have, right, Clinton? Does that
Hmm.
simplistic enough? And
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen any player with an negative 32.8. The weird thing is last year was 2.1. So this is what makes me think it's and every year before it's like okay, it's 2.1 and 22. It's 2, 6, 7. I would be
Well, that
okay with this of a first baseman being at like a -5 or something like that. But negative 32.8? What's going on?
would be interesting to see. I guess what Tampa Bay what's the error count there, but also like how many balls have been hit to him this year. Um,
Hmm.
might be very telling as well. Has he just been a bad luck in terms of
Yeah, he's at
you know?
8 errors at first base. How do you have 8 errors at first base?
Yeah,
That's not good, right? I mean,
that's a high for to me. That's very high for that.
oh, I don't know, guys. Andrew Vaughn and Mark Hanna. They're bargain basement versions of what the first base. That may be where they go. I mean,
Yeah.
both of those. You know, if they have reasonable lefty splits, maybe that's what you go do. So maybe I owe the world a okay. That was the premium that was going shopping at Neiman Marcus. Now let's go shopping for first baseman at Kmart
Mm-hmm.
and it's Mark Hanna and Andrew Vaughn and lower cost options. All right, guys. Anything else?
Okay.
Do you guys have pitching prospects you want to look at? Clint, anything else?
I don't have anything at the moment. I think we came across with some great ideas and really talked about everything, comprehensively, but also just, we're gonna be right back at this, probably looking at this data tomorrow and then the next day, and we'll, if Larry and I need to, we can, we'll just start, um, we'll do 2 shows a night even if we have to, just talking this alone, depending on how things go, and we'll get, we might have different discussions to have after this weekend series. So, um,
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm just gonna warn everybody. I'm bailing out of trade deadline stuff. I got series articles to write. I got moneymaker articles to write, and and really the series that starts tomorrow, I would say, is the most important series of the year. If that because for the Astros really to do damage in the postseason, I think they really want to get into position of being the 3 seed. It would be amazing if they were able to weasel their way into the 2 seed. Um, and so I think they really needed to win the division. Um, and so that starts with beating Seattle in the series tomorrow because you beat them. You if the Astros swept Seattle, well, if the Astros win 2 or 3, they'll be even with them. If
yeah.
the Astros swept them, they really are really good. So the Phillies pitchers are close to the MLB that can be had for Myers or Chad. I don't know, guys. I so in my filter of this, I have all the good teams filtered out. Now, I did that last year, and it's like, well, wait a minute, you shouldn't do that because some of these the Astros are talking about trading, a classic strength for strength trade. That's what you're asking about, Brandon, because like are the Phillies have got injuries, right, with the outfield, and they have needs in the outfield. Let me look real quick. So, Ryumoto's hurt. Okay, so I guess there's not outfield injuries, but their outfield hasn't been all that great, from what I understand. Let me also check that a different way. We can just do that from. Yeah, we can do it here. No, we can't. Okay. There. Let's do it this way. Phillies. Okay, so you see the blue down there. Wait, let me blow this up so everybody can see it. You see the Phillies is what it's telling us is that their weakness is the whole outfield's just been terrible from a war delivery. 29th, 26th, and 19th. So they need outfield help. They
Mhm.
need it. So, all right. So let's go back. Let's go back to the Phillies. Like which Phillies pitcher would they be willing to trade? Would they be? They're not. They're not giving. Would they be willing to trade Christopher Sanchez? All right, maybe I should, here. Let's do it this way because we're going to get quickly to the trade value of all these guys is way too high. No, yeah, Christopher Sanchez. Now I would pick the highest rated. That guy's 82. We're not getting him. Tyler Phillips. Would they be willing to trade you Tyler Phillips? Ooh, Tyler Phillips, 0.2. Is he? Oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe he's not worth it. Yeah, he's not worth it. Rangers Suarez? They're not going to trade you Rangers Suarez, are they? I think the last time I looked at this, like Rangers Suarez is 27.9. Now, Clint, remember when we talked about Kyle Tucker?
Mhm.
If you were willing to trade Kyle Tucker for Ranger Suarez, I think the Phillies would listen.
I mean, I think you can get a lot of teams. I think there's a handful of teams that will listen for sure. Um, but the problem, I guess, the way that the Astros' best position would be, you want to not just them, but a team that has the financial ability to extend him is going to be
Correct. And the
interested.
Phillies, yeah,
And the
the
Phillies
Phillies
have
would meet
that.
that.
So, like, the Phillies check
Yeah.
that box, they check a few other boxes, but they also have the talent to help reciprocate the trade value as well. And that's where I always want to drive home. That's why it's like when we talk about Kyle Tucker, what do those scenarios really look like? Well, the Philadelphia Phillies would be one of those teams that could write the check and send you the talent at the same time, and definitely listen in that regard. And it's not going to be the same with every other organization.
So, what about Tyjon Walker? Oh man, he's been terrible this year. Never mind.
Yeah.
All right. So Kobe Allard. It sounds like that looks like a player that would be really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, he's not. What?
Really?
They okay? The trade value here. Oh, he's a free agent. No, he's ARB eligible at 25. How
Yeah.
old is he? 26. That doesn't look right. What's going on there? Huh. Okay.
That's odd.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Let's see. Came over from Atlanta. How did they get him? I have to take a look. Oh, he's not pitched well. Okay.
No.
Okay. Hmm. No, Kobe Allard from the Atlanta. Okay. Now I know who we're talking about now. Former Ranger. Almost out of service time. Okay. I don't know, guys. There's nobody that actually just like jumps out at me as a. So one of the things that surprises me about the Phillies, and I guess this is because they just have four great pitchers, but like, how are they? Who's their fifth pitcher? Is it Turnbull? I guess it's Turnbull. He's cleared to resume. Okay, so what happens over the next 10 days with Turnbull? There's your pitcher. All right. It doesn't look like he would be that expensive. Maybe I'm wrong. No, he's actually got a negative trade value. Wow. There's your option. Spencer Turnbull. Would the Phillies be willing to trade him? What do you think, Brandon? That's what I go for. But I have to write that one down, Clint.
I'm sending
Another
them
one I
to
got
you
right
in
now.
our chat
Okay.
so that we
Okay.
have
Okay.
we
Good.
have
Spencer
Cal
Turnbull.
Quantrill, Andrew Vaughn, Spencer Turnbull, just to make sure we have them. That way we don't lose them.
Okay. All right, guys. Anything else? I am wiped out after
Yep.
writing almost all day long. But this has been awesome. Thanks, guys, for really. I mean, it's been a really good discussion, really good chat.
Yeah.
We've been at this 2 hours and 18 minutes. So
And we'll be talking about this more, and I mean, obviously we won't be revisiting it soon, but maybe middle of next week we'll come right back again and do it again to
right.
reevaluate. We'll have more details on wins and losses, and we'll see what some other teams do, and that'll help drive where we should go and anything. So if you think of anything in the meantime, shoot it in a message to us or tweet it at us and let us know or comment on the YouTube videos afterwards. And obviously you can find us at LarryTheGM.com. Links are in our X bios. Um, give us a like, subscribe, share, and be ready
Yeah,
because this is it.
if you're here and you have not subscribed to both the YouTube channel, Clint's YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, please do so. If you have not subscribed to the website, please do so. Um, Become a premium member, become a moneymaker member, um, and you're doing that kind of selfishly. You'll get some premium content. You'll get it before others. You'll get moneymakers every day, but do it because you want to support the site, right? Because guys, we're a tiny site. Um, we're we're focused on quality, not quantity, and so please help us out with the financial support. You can support on Patreon if you'd rather do it that way, but help us out financially, and but help us out on the YouTube side as well. All right, guys, have a good night. Thanks, Clint.
Yep. Thank you.